Nearly 3 months after a Southside home was left riddled with bullet holes, police have laid attempted murder charges. Good evening and thank you for joining us. A Toronto area man who's been arrested on drug charges in Thunder Bay in the past is now facing 7 counts of attempted murder with a firearm.
21-year-old Kyle Remlaken was arrested by city police yesterday afternoon, 3 months after a Southside home was peppered with bullets. The frightening incident happened in late July when police received reports about multiple gunshots at this home on Wiley Street. Officers arrived to find around 20 bullet holes in and around the front window of the residence, but there were no injuries reported to police. Along with attempted murder, Remlaken also faces 11 other charges, including drug trafficking and possession of a firearm obtained by crime. The arrest was made in the Academy Drive area while city police were investigating a separate incident. Officers were looking for suspects in an armed robbery and assault that occurred Monday evening in the 700 block of John Street. 2 20-year-old men from the GTA were also arrested near Academy Drive and face several charges, including robbery with a firearm.
OPP in Marathon have arrested 1 driver and are still looking for another after 2 vehicles fled from police on Highway 17 yesterday afternoon. Around 1:30, officers saw 2 vehicles speeding. Both then fled from police at extremely high speeds, and the officers decided not to pursue them in the interest of public safety. The driver of one of the vehicles was eventually arrested a short distance away. The 23-year-old from Valley East near Sudbury faces 8 charges, including fleeing from police and stunt driving. The second vehicle was located as well, but the driver got away on foot and still hasn't been found. Police remind people in the Marathon area to ensure their homes and vehicles are securely locked, and anyone with information is asked to contact OPP or Crime Stoppers.
The mayor of Oliver Papoonge welcomes the news that the highway between Thunder Bay and Kekabeka Falls could be expanded from 2 lanes to a divided 4-lane route.
The Ontario government released a request for proposals last week, seeking preliminary designs for the 26-kilometer section of Highway 1117. TBT's Brendan Miller spoke with Mayor Lucy Klusterhuis about the plans and brings us this report.
The Trans-Canada Highway is a crucial piece of infrastructure running from one side of the country to the other. And in this region, it's often the only major trucking route that runs from east to west. The current 2-lane route has long been cause for concern due to the risk of head-on collisions. That's one of the main reasons why Oliver Papoonge Mayor Lucy Klusterhuis is pleased that this divided 4-lane expansion could finally be happening.
Once they start, there's going to be a lot of jobs for people to build the highway. And on top of that, the safety for truckers, for tourists, and for the local travelers. And it'll just alleviate the heavy traffic on some of our other roads.
There are no timeframes attached to the province's RFP for the preliminary design of the future 4-laned highway. Klusterhuis says having more lanes to use has another advantage that can help with overall traffic flow if there is a serious collision along the highway.
When there's an accident now, it kind of closes the highway right down, and it can be for hours, sometimes even up to days. And it's the only highway that goes across Canada. So I think that this will be it'll be a great benefit to our area.
Klusterhuis says she's been told the MTO's plans also include a bypass around Kekabeka Falls to a spot near Mokoman Road, with a new bridge somewhere else over the Cam River. The RFP only mentions the route between Kekabeka and Thunder Bay Expressway.
Now they're looking at the section from there up to Mokoman, which will mean it'll bypass the village of Kekabeka Falls. There'll be a new bridge, and all the truck traffic that's been, such a bother to everyone, both on 1117 and 102 Dawson Road, will go down this section of highway, so it'll alleviate a lot of the traffic here.
No one from the Ministry of Transportation was able to provide any information about the potential bypass around Kekabeka Falls, but the 4-laning project would include interchanges and intersection improvements. Brendan Miller, TBT News.
Nearly 5 years after a major fire damaged several buildings on Simpson Street, the derelict structures at Cherry's Corner are finally coming down. McKellar Ward Councillor Brian Hamilton says it's been a complex process, and amidst the demolition delays have been frustrating for everyone.
There's the block that everybody knows about that's been a point of frustration for citizens for the last, well, since the springtime. So it's been a long time. We're finally dealing with some of those buildings.
The big fire in November of 2019 damaged 3 adjoining buildings on Simpson. The Rizzo Cabinets building was torn down a year later, but the others were left standing. Then in April of this year, a pickup truck crashed into the former European bakery, causing even more damage. The old Hells Angels clubhouse was finally torn down last month, and city officials say the old bakery will be demolished in November. Hamilton says he's been involved in discussions about potential future uses for the vacant space, including new residential housing.
Because we want to deal with some of the mess, first of all, that's at Cherry's Corner and some of the buildings there, but also maybe potentially do a more, a community-generated design for that corner. I think there's a tremendous opportunity actually to design that corridor in a way that's not only attractive, but really addresses the needs and the desires of the community in that neighborhood. It's a historic district. There's a lot of potential there for housing, services, business activity, so we want to make sure we get it right.
The roadwork project on Simpson Street was recently scaled back, with the section around Cherry's Corner pushed back until next year. Hamilton says that will allow the city more time to map out best uses for the vacant property and determine what underground connections might be required.
The Trojan Horse is a classic tale of success through trickery and deceit.
And now that symbol is being used to warn the public about healthcare privatization by the Ford government. The Ontario Council of Hospital Unions and the Ontario Health Coalition have created a very literal interpretation of the Trojan Horse. And this week it was on tour here in the Northwest. Haley Perreault has more.
This 15-foot replica of the Trojan Horse kicked off its journey across Ontario at Queen's Park in Toronto on October 4th. On Monday, it stopped in Rainy River, Emo, and Kenora. Tuesday morning, it was in Sioux Lookout before making its way to Mini Queen's Park in Thunder Bay.
The Trojan Horse is about the gift that they gave to Troy to say the end of the war. But as we know, there were soldiers in it and they destroyed the city. We're pretty much saying that Doug Ford is destroying the healthcare system.
The union and the Health Coalition say the province investing money into funding private clinics does more harm than good for wait times at public hospitals, pulling staff away from areas like surgeries that are already in a staffing crisis. They say this makes necessary procedures and treatments even more expensive and inaccessible to most Ontarians.
People don't have the money to be paying out of pocket for health care. We're all working class and we have a lot of people that are on pensions that can't afford this. Cataract surgeries is a big thing. The elderly are always having to make appointments for their eyes and they go get their cataracts done, and there's billing behind it that they're not aware of if they go to these private clinics.
Jules Tupker, co-chair of the Thunder Bay Health Coalition, stresses that Ontario has the lowest funding for public health care, hospitals, and long-term care out of all the provinces in Canada.
The Health Coalition, all we're asking for is at least get us up to the Canadian average of funding for hospitals and health care. And they won't even do that. It's a pretty simple answer. Provide the funding and we'll get the staff, and we'll be able to have the staff to keep things going. And people will come back. People will stay in Thunder Bay if we have the funding for the staff, and the work can continue here.
The protest, along with its symbolic steed, continued on its journey across Ontario, including stops in Geraldton and Hearst. Haley Perreault, TBT News.
Premier Doug Ford faced off against opposition leader Marit Stiles today during question period at Queen's Park.
CTV's Siobhan Morris tells us what was said during the fiery exchange.
Mr. Speaker, I just ignore the rubbish that comes over from the opposition.
In what's become something of a question period rarity, the Premier took on challenges from the opposition leader directly. Marit Stiles pushing Doug Ford on his ties to lobbyists.
This Premier proudly says he doesn't care about evidence or even what the people think, as long as it apparently works for his friends, for party insiders.
Ford insists he has the good of Ontarians at heart.
In the next election, we look forward to taking care of that row, and that row over there, which is going to happen. Because people know life is better in Ontario than it was 6 years ago.
This morning we heard from educators who paint a worrying picture of violence in our schools. The NDP argues this problem has deepened under the Ford government with less funding to go around.
Amy Boyack has to gear up for her job as an educational assistant.
Padding here all along my arms, separate arm guards that go over top to prevent hits, bites if children kick high enough. And I'm wearing a bump cap for children who hit in the head or if projectiles are being thrown at me.
To guard against injuries, workers say are becoming more common.
Sorry. Come home with injuries and bruises and in a cast.
With fewer staff and increasingly challenging students,
low staffing creates an environment where the needs of the student, especially those in special education, cannot be fully met.
The education minister says the government has increased funding for schools.
Violence is never acceptable in our classrooms. But Speaker, when it comes to student safety, the NDP's report card on this subject shows there is a clear lack of understanding.
Slamming the opposition for voting against some government measures. Siobhan Morris, CTV News.
A section of the Harbour Expressway is now shut down for resurfacing work. The roadway between Carrick Street and Fort William Road will be closed for at least a week while contractors rush to complete the project before the winter weather arrives. The repaving project began today. It'll cost the city about $350,000. The work is expected to be finished within 10 days, but that time frame could change depending on the weather and other factors. The contractor and crews have already begun stripping the old asphalt in preparation for 2 new layers of pavement. City Engineering Manager Matthew Miedema explains why the work is being done so late in the construction season.
This project is a continuation from earlier this year. We finished the pavement resurfacing work and intersection renewal at Harbour Memorial. So just timing of the work here with the crews. They bounce around throughout the city. We're surfacing streets all throughout. This one they left later on in the year, but weather's still good, so we're going to finish this one up. So Carrick Street is fully open and Fort William Road is still open, and traffic can still get to the businesses on 16th Avenue there.
Miedema urges motorists to slow down and use caution around the construction zone, as crews have recently experienced a number of safety concerns due to the high speed of some drivers.
A group of lucky burger lovers got the chance to taste 5 of this year's November creations ahead of the month-long fundraiser. The tasting party was held last night at Sleeping Giant Brewery Co. The event featured the 2024 entries from Beefcake's Burger Factory, Patty Wagon, Prospector Brew Pub, Redline Smokehouse, and The Sal. Attendees also got to pair their burgers with a taste of Sleeping Giant's non-alcoholic root beer, which is a new part of the fundraiser. Campaign organizer Erica Mikola says the United Way couldn't do what they do without the support of these local businesses.
It means everything to have partnerships with different local businesses throughout the community. An event like this, Novemberger, honestly, we could not do it without our restaurants for one, but it's really, really cool to be able to invite other corporate businesses to be a part of this campaign in different ways that just jive with what they do as well.
Officials announced that 9 other United Ways in other parts of Canada will also take part in Novemberger. Last year, 27 restaurants participated, raising $65,000 for the United Way. Mikola says more than 35 restaurants are involved this year. The campaign starts on November 1st.